Hi, my name is Zarrar Kahn, and I'm the writer and director of In Flames. In Flames was my feature debut film, and we premiered at Cannes in 2023. We were the return to the director's fortnight after 47 years, and I've been traveling and with the film for the greater part of the last year. We just released in the States, and we toured across New York, LA, Chicago, Toronto, and Vancouver, and soon we're going to be releasing in the UK. The movie is a jet supernatural thriller about a mother and daughter in Karachi, Pakistan, who are battling with ghosts that are both, who are battling with forces, I would say, that are both phantasmal and real, and how they have to come together if they hope to survive in this deeply patriarchal society.
What lessons did you take away from this experience that will inform your future projects?
A lot of good lessons, to be honest. Like a lot of the stuff that we did was stuff that I'll carry on in the way that I decided to be pretty brave and take some pretty big creative swings with this project. And that's kind of emboldened me to continue on that path and take bigger creative swings with the next one. Um, so, a lot of the lessons on this film were like what worked, and a lot worked. And now, as I grow as a filmmaker, I want to just dive deeper into that hole of, being experimental, of trusting my gut, of finding collaborators who are invested in the story, not only in an artistic way, but also because their lived experiences overlap with the themes and the characters of the story we're trying to tell. So those were all things that we tried to do with In Flames, and I'm going to be continuing doing as I move on to other projects. I think the biggest lesson is I learned a lot about special effects. And I know this movie doesn't look like it has a lot, but it has a lot. Like a lot of the special effects in this movie are things you wouldn't even notice, like cleaning up crowd scenes, reflections, just small, tiny things that help make the world real and also allow us not to be sued by like brands and logos that we had to clean up later. So, yeah, that was the biggest thing that I had never really played with before. And I learned a lot about just how labor intensive it is, how expensive it is, and how to do it in different ways that I will be now implementing in my next project.
Nice. And can you talk to us a little bit about your directing process? Like how did you go about casting like Miriam, and what qualities were you looking for in the mother and daughter actors, characters?
I historically have liked a really long casting period because I come from theater. I wasn't trained in cinema. So I like to have a rehearsal period with my actors that also informs their characters. And we had another actress attached unfortunately about a month before we were shooting could no longer do the film. So then we were like kind of like, oh shit, like what are we gonna do now? So I spoke to our casting director Muhammad Ali Hashmi, and he put out a call in his kind of theater network because he's also from theater. At this point, we had casted majority of the film. Bakhtawar Mazhar, who plays the role of Fariha, who's the mother, um, she had done the short version of the film with me in 2018, and we'd had this long period in which she was reading drafts of the script. She was giving feedback on that. That was helping create that character so that it spoke to her experiences of being a woman and a mother and a wife in Pakistan, in Karachi. So that's usually my process where I'll be finding these people who have lived experiences similar to the characters and like collaborate with them deeply on the writing level. But we weren't able to do that with the role of Mariam. We found Ramesh Nawal through a Zoom audition, and it was a 45-minute Zoom. And I remember on the other side of that, just being completely blown away. Like this girl has come out of nowhere and is incredible, and that never happens. That on we had been auditioning across Pakistan once we realized we no longer had a lead. And we were looking in Lahore and Islamabad and Rawalpindi and Sialkot. We were doing Zoom auditions across the country. It was COVID, so everything was Zoom auditions. And Ramisha, who's from Karachi, she like we came on. Both of us had really shitty internet at that point, and I remember just like being transfixed and thinking that if she's this good with crappy Wi-Fi on a shitty Zoom camera, I cannot imagine how good she'll be when we um have like a real camera on her. And then once so I knew after that 45-minute audition that she was it. She had so much presence on camera and there was such a rich interiority happening with her. Where there's so much just behind her eyes, there's such a well and such a depth that you know that this character has. Um, and I think for her, because, once I got to know her, once we started, we were able to have a few rehearsals prior to the shoot. Not many, I'm going to say maybe 2 to 3 weeks. Um, getting to know her and her experiences of being the oldest daughter, being working in theater, being the first person from her family to work in the arts. And you know what it means to work in the arts in a South Asian family. She's trailblazing in so many of her own ways, and she's so deeply independent and fiercely independent and protective of her family. So there was a lot that she could pull from her own experiences to draw on for this character. And my process of working with Ramisha was really speaking to what was the main motivation and the main beats in each scene, and what was the character experiencing before that scene, what were they bringing with them to that scene, where was their head at, and then letting her play with what she felt was the right tone for her once she had that kind of knowledge of where her character's at and where they're going. Because for so much of people, like I'm not really someone who deeply lives in the moment. I'm always one step behind, thinking about what I've done today, or largely what else I have to do. And this character is like that, where she's always thinking 10 steps ahead of how do I protect my family? How do I protect myself? Um, and she was able to bring that so flawlessly. And with Bakhtawar, it was a different process. Bakhtawar is a trained actor. She's been working at Pakistan's leading theater academy for many years, Napa. And she likes to dive into the text. So it's less kind of this qualitative, discussing motivations, and more kind of like diving into what is the subtext of this line. And I deeply believe there's a no one shoe fits all process when working with actors, because everyone is coming from their own level of experience. And that being said, for both of these performers, it was all three of ours first feature film. So we were kind of seeing what works for us as we were doing it, which was really beautiful.
Can you talk a little bit about Mariam and Fariha's relationship and kind of what was your inspiration behind that?
So for their characters, I wanted to kind of show how, you know, systematically the society is trying to convince them that they are isolated in this experience of oppression. And, that's what like systems of oppression do. They make you think that you're the only one experiencing this trauma. You're the only one who's a victim. And by isolating the two of them against each other, by making them feel like they are not only alone, but they can't trust each other. Uh, that allows the society and the powers that are running that society to have strength, because you don't want marginalized communities to realize that they're all being marginalized together. Because then they can, then people can come together and try and overturn that society and create change. So it was really, showing how the patriarchy has pitted these women against each other and made them not realize the depth and the well of the experiences that they share, and that through the journey of their parallel journeys, which echo each other in many ways, they're able to finally come together and in a glorious moment find relief, find escape, find triumph. which is the point where we end the film. And it ends saying that this leaning on people who share your community is how you will survive and hopefully grow. But Karachi, this film is very specifically set in Karachi, and I describe Karachi as a very hard city, and it's a city that forces people to make hard choices, and it's a microcosm of many places. Um, because it's where everyone in Pakistan comes. It's like the biggest city we have and the fifth largest city in the world. So, it's speaking about the hard choices that they're able to make, but how together they can survive that place.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about that that is it a the whistle, like the noise that they hear, is that something that you kind of found during the post-production process, or is that something that you thought of when you were writing the script?
It happened when we were writing the script. We were writing the script during COVID, so there was a lot of time to be alone, to think, to remember places. And I was living in Karachi at the time as well, so that was always, being in the location where you're writing, I think is really helpful and useful. And I've been living and working in that city for 10 years and also grew up there for most of my life. And it was drawing on the memory of being a child and waking up in the middle of the night because I'm a kind of light sleeper, and waking up because there's a like the sound of a whistle and a metal stick hitting against the ground, and not understanding what this terrifying sound is, and then asking my parents and them telling me that, oh, it's the neighborhood guard who's going around and telling people that it's safe, and that's his job. And he would kind of do that metal clang and whistle, and he would do it every hour. And as a kid, I found that really frightening. And later I was wondering, I'm like, why did we have to be reminded that it is safe to be outside? Why did we have to be? What was the need for that reminder? And then utilizing that kind of as a touchstone for this world that Mariam and Fariha navigate, where there is no safety, where things are supposed to be safe, but that is hiding the much greater danger that lurks below that. So it was kind of subverting um, the expectation of safety, and how we have to create our own safe spaces. That's where that came from. So yeah, it was early days of the script.
Wow, that's so cool. And so we were talking about, patriarchy and very this mother-daughter relationship and these complex characters. And I feel like this film deals with like some intense and mm, yeah, like just intense subject matter. So how did you approach these sensitive topics in a thoughtful way, especially it being set in Karachi in the present day?
What helped was that I had a history of making films about sensitive topics in Karachi in the present state. So me and my team, we'd been making short films in Karachi for the greater part of 10 years. And I mean, I never really considered these topics to be sensitive. And then the movies would come out and they'd be like, oh, we can't believe that you guys broached this topic. And I'm like, but it's a part of life. It is deeply a part of life as we're all experiencing it. But we just, in South Asian societies, we tend to sweep a lot under the rug. There's a lot that goes unsaid. And I think cinema deeply, should be a reflection of society as it is, an unvarnished reflection, not like a flattering Snapchat filter reflection, but really showing the good and the bad. So because my team and I had, years of experience, we were able to create this cinema within our budget level, while still walking away from an experience where so many of the people who were in it, um, it's a life-changing experience. And like it's been a real beacon for so many of the crew members, where it's transformed our lives. And I think a lot of that came with the intent of, knowing that we didn't want to recreate trauma, and keeping as much of the violence as we can off screen. So while we have violence happening to these characters, rather than focusing on the violence in a way that's sensationalist, which unfortunately, is another legacy of genre cinema, where genre cinema would often be used to titillate, to put female protagonists in spaces for male audiences largely. But we knew going in that, the violence that is happening to these characters is something we want our audiences to feel uncomfortable about. We want our audiences to be the ones who are squirming in their seats. And the way to do that, that we tapped in on earlier, was with, me and my cinematographer, Igor Nibolatova, was knowing that like eyes are the windows to the soul. So when violence is happening, we're often just squarely playing that violence off of the faces of our protagonists and their reactions. Rather than a wide where we're seeing the violence, we're really just looking at the way that they are reacting to the violence. Um, and this allowed us to, dive into sensitive subject matter without recreating trauma and without, sensationalism, which was important to us from the get-go.
Talking more about the cinematography, I mean, the visuals were beautiful. So like what was your vision for the film's overall aesthetic and style? And were there any like particular films or directors or even like artistic influences that inspired your vision and your process?
I would say there's two really large ones that inspired me. One is contemporary, well, three. One is like cinema from Senegal, which is a African port city. Sorry, African port country, and a film called Tuki Buki and Hyenas, and then and then Atlantics. So these three films were really incredible to watch because they're set in a Muslim African country that's a seaside city that looks so much like Karachi, but also like Karachi in a way that I've never seen Karachi captured. Because Karachi, usually when it's captured is um like either a Bollywood replica, which is very strange because it doesn't look or feel like that at all. Or lately, there's a lot of like influence of like Anurag Kashyap's Gang of Wasseypurs and showing Karachi as this deeply dangerous city that's always lit by yellow light, And so that's the way that I'd seen Karachi being captured, and that wasn't the way that I was experiencing Karachi, where it was beautiful but also harsh. It was a very harsh beauty. It's by the ocean. So how do we capture that feeling of being by this overwhelming force, which is also where everyone goes to escape? Why do we go to escape there? What is about the city makes it need to be a point of escape? And then, so those three films were really informative to the way that I wanted to capture the city. And then, in terms of camera movement, I love Satyajit Ray. For so many South Asian filmmakers, he's the gold standard of what is possible, of what is achievable. And when we discover his cinema, which is often not when we're kids, because we grow up watching, DDLJ, but it's when we're older, we discover Satyajit Ray and we're like, where was this our whole lives? And his very slow camera movements, his intentional camera choices, the way that his frames linger on faces, on very, the way that often he'll do a shot that's like three different shots, and it's a oneer, but it's not a oneer in the showy way. It's a very slow movement. And then finally, the genre elements were coming from an Italian director I really like, D'Argento from Suspiria, who you'd never guess because it's very camp genre. But I think utilizing that with these other elements allowed me to create a filmic language that really was unique to this story. Um, and then my cinematographer, Egil Nurbalatova, is, she's a genius. She's made I met her because there's a director who I was friends with at the Asian Film Academy in Korea, and Eagle's from Kazakhstan, which is in Central Asia, and this was her first time coming to Pakistan, and it was her first time in South Asia, and it was really important to me to have a cinematographer who identifies as a woman, so that way the lens of the world that we're looking into is one that has had these experiences. Because as a director, I feel like your job is you're almost like the coach, but you're not the eyes. The cinematographer is the eyes into the world. So, it was all of these things together that allowed us to shape the film into these visuals that I'm happy you found to be beautiful.
So, what has been the most like rewarding aspect of making this film so far?
I mean, so many. This film has changed my entire life, you
Yeah.
know? At the time that I was working on posting this film, was working at a nonprofit full time. I was balancing being a filmmaker and having a full-time job. And like through the film, through the success of the film, I'm now a full-time filmmaker again, which is the dream, you know? And it's made opportunities for me as a person, professionally, personally. And then what it's also done for my team, like for many of the people in this film, through this film, it was the first time they left Pakistan. And they were able to travel the world, and they were able, how difficult it is to get visas as a Pakistani, as a South Asian. They're able to now, now they have visas for America, they have visas for Canada, for Europe. We were able as a team to experience all of these highs and successes, which is so overwhelming. And I remember when we all met at Cannes, and the day we met was the day of the premiere, and that was very surreal because you have people flying in from Canada who did all the post-production. You have people flying in from Pakistan who were there for production. You have our DP coming from Kazakhstan, and all of us meeting in the south of France to present this film. And, we are a low budget film. So getting all of us there was really difficult because we had to apply for a series of grants. But that feeling that not only are we all here, we're all here to present this film together, everyone meeting each other for the first time. It was incredible. And then we had an insane party the day after our premiere, which felt very surreal. And I was really adamant that like I want a big party, and it was bigger than I could have ever imagined. Like my distributors and my executive producers, they like booked out the Kinzan Beach, which is this tent for 300 people on the beach. And we got a set made from Karachi Community Radio, which is, my favorite DJs who work on local music. And they were doing a combination of Pakistani pop and Bollywood and Afro beats. And it was like the best party experience of my life, where we're like doing Bhangra in the south of France in a circle of 200 people. Um, yeah, it's the best, one of the best nights of my life.
That sounds so fun.
Yeah, it was very cool, very weird and very cool. And
That,
everyone in Cannes is like, what's going on here? And we're like, come party with the South Asians. We'll show you how to do it.
yeah, so true. Um, and do you have like a personal favorite scene or moment in the film that resonated with you? Like,
Yeah.
and yeah.
It's when Mariam gets off the motorcycle and walks towards the edge of the cliff, and then the camera is following her, and then we reveal the Arabian Sea and the fishing boats, and then the camera goes back to her face and it rests on her face, and you can just see all of kind of the tension and all of the stress, just kind of like the salty ocean breeze is just like wearing it away, and the sound design also becomes the sound of the ocean. And we were doing post production of this film in at Rolling Studios in Toronto in the middle of winter, in the middle of a snowstorm. And we were doing nights because we were getting reduced rates on the studio. And my sound designer, Brett Killeran, who did an incredible job, agreed to work on that. So like imagine Christmas nights, the city's dead. No one's in Toronto at that point. Everyone leaves. and I'm just like walking home in a snowstorm and walking to the studio in a snowstorm. And I'd like enter the studio and this scene would play, and I would just for a moment feel like I'm back in Karachi. And it is like deeply relaxing, which is a weird thing to say about this film, but it was the moment that would really like transport me back home.
Beautiful. And last question, like, what do you hope audiences will take away from watching In Flames? Is there any like message you want to give them?
I hope that they'll walk away learning about a place and a city that they might have never heard of or never been to, learning how the challenges that people face across the world are deeply similar, and also about how it's only through community and the power of community that life is worth living. So that's really what I hope that people take away from the film.